what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make the plinth look a little bit more interesting. I think it maybe looks a little bit stark, so I'm going to put a tiny amount of decoration onto the top of the plinth. And to do that, I'm going to use some geospheres, and I'm going to modify those to make them look a little bit more interesting. So I'm going to turn on geosphere, base to pivot, turn on auto grid, and I'm just going to draw this geosphere in place. Considering its scale in the scene, it's probably a little bit too dense at the moment, so I'm going to make that a little bit less dense. I think that looks quite cool now. Maybe move it out a little bit more. There we go. I'm going to have 4 of these eventually, so and to do that I'm going to use the clone tool, and I'm also going to modify the pivot of it. So the first thing is let's modify it to make it a little bit more interesting. To do that, I'm going to use a 3x3 lattice, which you can see here. You've got a 2x2, 3x3, and 4x4. That's basically just how many control points the lattice has. So I actually want to stretch just only the top half of the sphere, so I'm just going to put a 3x3 lattice onto it. You can see that the 3x3 lattice has sub-objects just like the poly object had. So I'm going to go into sub-object mode, and I'm going to select some control points. There we go. And I'm going to use those to actually pull up the top faces of the sphere to make it into something a little bit more egg-shaped. Now, because I'm deforming the sphere, maybe I was a little bit wrong about the amount of detail that I had in it. So I'm going to go back down the stack and modify the tessellation. So let's put the tessellation back up a little. There we are. So that looks a little bit better now. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back up to the top of the stack, and I want to change the shape of the sphere a little bit more. So I'm actually going to put a bend on it. So here we go. We put a bend on, and I'm just going to bend it over. There we go. Now I would like actually that bend to go out from the center of the table, so what I'm going to do next is change the direction of the bend. So let's change it so it's at 45 degrees. I'll do it numerically to make it a little bit more accurate. So there we go. We've got a 45-degree offset there on the bend, so it actually goes away from the center of the table, from the plinth. So we've got a weird kind of gherkin-y thing. There's a little bit of ornamentation. I'm just going to increase the angle a little bit more, and to show you that Max is procedural, what's actually happening here is you've got the geosphere, that's the base, then you've got an FFD lattice applied to it, and then on top of that you've got a bend applied. And if I go to the base of the sphere of that stack, you can see that it's actually still showing me the total result of everything that's been applied to that geosphere. This button here, which is the show end result on off toggle button, will actually stop that, and now it'll actually show you at each level the status of the sphere as you go up the stack. So you can see here it's unmodified, here it's got the FFD applied to it, and then finally it's got the bend applied to it. So that's actually very useful to examine exactly what's happening to your object as you go through the stack. And generally, it depends what you want to do with each object, whether you have that turned on or off. Anyway, for now I'm pretty much satisfied with the gherkin. Maybe I've bent it over maybe a little bit too much, so I'll put that back a little. And I think that's fine for now. Now, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to actually change the pivot point of that gherkin type thing, and I'm actually going to change it so it's the same in exactly the same spot as the center of the table. And then what that will allow me to do is actually rotate it, and it will actually rotate around the center of the table rather than around its own axis, because you can see at the moment if I rotate it, it's just going to rotate around its own axis here, which really isn't that useful for what I wanted to do. So I'm going to go to pivot, effect pivot only, click on the align tool, and I'm going to click on the table. And now this will actually align the pivot point of the gherkin to the pivot point of the table. So I'm going to align it to the position X, Y, Z. I'm going to use the pivot point for both, which actually popped off the bottom of the screen there. So let me just adjust this so you can see this a little bit better. There we go. Do this again. Dun, dun, bum. Pivot point. And you can see that the orientation of the gherkin is still actually based on the geosphere. So in this case, I'm going to actually align it to the table as well. So all the axes are exactly the same. And there we go. It's now actually got the pivot of the table. I'm going to turn on angle snaps. Actually, it's on already. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down Shift and rotate it on this axis here through 90 degrees. There we go. And I'm going to do that 3 times. And they're going to be instances, so I can modify them all later at the same time if I really want to. There we go. So we've got 4 of them going around the table, so we've got a little bit of ornamentation there. And as I said, they're all instances, so if I want to change one of them, I can, all of them, I can just change one of them. And they'll all change at the same time. So that's actually a pretty cool feature there. The next thing I need to do is, I'd like this rope to be able to bend so that when I animate it swinging back and forth, when it reaches different points of its swing, I can make it look a little bit more natural. So the pivot point actually at the moment is at the top of the rope, which is exactly where I need it for the bend. So I'm just going to put a bend modifier on it. There we go. I'm going to try that out. Yes, that's fine. The only thing is, at the moment I actually want it to swing this way rather than the way it's actually swinging at the moment. So I'm just going to put a 90 degree change to its direction. And now it's actually bending in the way that I want it to. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Let's have a look at the rope. You can see it's segmenting a little bit. So I'm going to go down to the cylindrical part of it and increase the height segments some more. So it's actually got enough detail there. And I think it's actually got too many sides. I don't think it really needs that many. So I'm going to knock that down a little bit. So there we go. That's pretty cool. Let's just reset that bend to 0. One thing you can see is that when I was actually bending it, as the rope bends around, the sphere, which is actually meant to be attached to the end of the rope, isn't attached at all. So to get that to stick on the end, what I'm actually going to use is a constraint, an animation constraint, to make that sphere stay on the end. So to do that, I select the sphere, go to animation, go to constraints, go to surface constraint. Actually, it's not a surface constraint, it's an attachment constraint. There we go. And it needs to know what object you want to actually attach it to. So we pick the rope. There we go. And it's used a default setting, and it's actually attached it to that face at the top there. Over here, you've actually got the options to change which particular face it's actually attached to. So what you do is you go to set position, and whatever face you click on, it'll actually stay attached to that face. So we're going to go to the end of the rope. There we go. It's actually attached to that face there. Click off set position. One problem is that, as you can see, it's actually rotated around quite badly, so we need to we've got angle snaps on, so we're pretty much guaranteed to have a nice clean rotation here. So I'm just going to rotate that round by 180 degrees, and there we are, it's back where we want it to be. And now if we change the bend angle on this rope, we can see that the sphere is attached to the end of the rope. So that's pretty cool. That's exactly what we want. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is let's put some very simple animation on this rope. Now I'm going to do this in PAL. So let me just turn it to PAL here. You can see Max has automatically scaled the timeline so that you get 25 frames a second, and it's changed the duration of the animation, so you have the actual same duration, even though it's playing at a different frame rate. Which means that, you know, in NTSC it's gone from 30 frames a second with 100 frames. In PAL it's only using 25 frames a second, and therefore it only needs 83 frames to actually cover a 4-second duration. So I'm going to change that. I'm going to change that to 200. So that are 25 frames a second with PAL, as I said. So in 100 frames you have 4 seconds. So our animation is going to be 8 seconds long, so I'm going to change that to 200, which is should be enough for what we want to do. Okay, there we go. You can see the timeline down the bottom has changed, and we now have 200 frames. So at the beginning of the animation, I'm going to actually rotate the rope so it's poised to swing down and actually strike the holy teapot. Let's say it's going to swing from here to here, and that's going to take, let's say, maybe a second, maybe a little bit longer than a second. So I'm going to actually move the timeline to 30. 1 second is 25 frames, so I'm going to actually make it a little bit longer than a second. I'm going to change it to, say, 33 frames. I'm going to turn on auto key, and I'm going to actually rotate the rope. Oops, that's gone a little bit too far. Let's just undo that. And whenever you have a value that you don't like, you can actually undo that just by right-clicking on the mouse. If you're holding down the left mouse button and you're rotating something around like this, you can actually put it back to the start value just by clicking on the right mouse button, like I did there. So let's actually rotate this through to here, and leave go, and you can see Max has created a key here, a rotation key. So we'll scrub through, goes up here and then stops dead, which is obviously not very natural. So let's change this key here just by selecting it and dragging it. Let's put it to 30. There we go. We moved it a little bit too much there. That's cool. And then we're going to go to frame 60. And I'm going to keep the same kind of frequency of swinging. So we'll go to frame 60 and we'll actually rotate it back again. But of course, each time it swings back, it actually goes a little bit lower. So let's just check that out. Swing, swing, yeah. And then we go to frame 90. And we'll have it swing again. Okay, there we go. Swing, swing, swing. 120. Swing back. I'm going to turn off snaps here so I can actually do finer angles. So there we go. Swing, 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 swing. 120. Then we go to 150. Swing back. There we go. And 180. Swing back. And then to frame 200. We'll just go for something in between there, just a little bit short. Okay, so there we are. We have the animation of the rope, and it slowly swings to a rest. Now, as I said, I think that looks a little bit the rope actually looks a little bit too rigid. So what I'm going to do is, as it swings, I'm going to actually change the bend angle on the modifier to make the rope bend and make it look just a little bit more interesting, like there's a little bit of lag going on there with the rope. So at the beginning of the animation, we have the rope selected, there's the modifier, there's the angle, which is 0. So I'm just going to change that slightly. So actually, the modification that I made earlier with the angle, the direction was completely wrong. So let me just undo that, put that back to 0. Oops, put that back to 0. There we are. And you can see now that I've actually got the bend going the wrong way, which looks particularly silly. So let me just do that the other way. Okay, that's much better. And let's turn on auto key again, and let's just animate that through. So it goes through there, reaches the high point here. We'll just bend it the other way slightly. There we go. Swings back this way. We'll just do that again, bend that like that. Okay, this way, bend that like that, the opposite direction again. Okay, bend like that, the opposite direction again, like that, opposite direction again. And let's say by the time we get to here, the rope gets pretty straight. Actually, no, let's have a little bit more. And by here, it's pretty much straight. That way. Okay, let's have a look at that animation. swings, it swings, it swings, it swings, it swings. Okay. We'll just play that back. Okay, I think that's fine. Let's have a look. Let's turn on real time and play that back. Okay, I think the speed of that looks okay. It looks quite heavy, you know, it looks quite weighty. I think that'll do for our animation. I think we'll use that. Okay, that's cool. Right then, let's go on to the next stage. When it swings down, it's got to hit the teapot. So I'm going to hand animate it. So as it flies down, it strikes the teapot around here. So I'm going to use a front view here, so I can see exactly what I'm doing. Comes down and it's around that frame there. You can see it actually hits between the two frames, between there and there. So on this frame it needs to be static, so I'm going to just put a key in here, just move it slightly, and then on this frame it needs to move. So let me actually just get rid of that key there, move the 0 key here and move that back. And okay, now it needs to be moving. So let's get it at the base there. Okay, and to show that the teapot flying through the air, I want to actually turn on trajectories, and I'm going to use the object properties to do that. Go to trajectory. There it is. Turn it on. And now when I animate the teapot, you can see there's a red line here that actually shows its position in space from frame to frame. So let's just do a very rough animation. Okay, let's say it takes, it's on frame 16 here. It'll take, let's say, a second to get to the floor. So you're talking about frame 40 something. So we'll stick it on the floor here. And then it bounces and you know, goes flying along. So it hits the ground here, and then 25 frames on, you know, frame 60 something, it hits the ground again. There we go. And again it hits the ground again, but a little bit shorter this time because each time it's bouncing a little bit less. There we go. And a little bit less. There we go. And then I'll say it hits the ground and slides, so it does a little bit less, hits the ground, and then slides along. So we'll just have it come to a rest here. Okay. Now you can see I've actually only really set up the points where it actually strikes the ground here. So what I'm going to do is go back now and actually put in the bounces. So it goes flying through the air, bounce, goes up, there we are, so it bounces there, hits the ground, bounces there, a little bit lower, bounces there, lower still. Let's actually go back and modify that. Maybe it's a little bit too high there. Want it to lose its energy a little bit faster. There we go. So we go bounce, 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 and then it just does a little skip, and then lands, and then just slides to a halt, as I said. Now, one of the problems you can see at the moment is that the interpolation of the animation is such that it starts flying through the air here in a very sort of smooth way, which is very cool. Then it hits the ground and bounces off the ground in a very smooth way, which isn't so cool. I mean, when you watch most objects, they hit the ground quite quickly and they bounce in quite a staccato manner. And then when they fly through the air, they follow an arc and they come down and they bounce again. And they follow an arc and then they bounce. And they follow an arc and they bounce. And they follow an arc and they bounce and then slide. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the curve editor. And you can see I've got the two curves here that actually describe the animation of the teapot. You can see that on the x-axis the teapot is basically just moving along, and you can see that on the z-axis it's actually bouncing. That's where the bounce is actually stored. So I'm not going to change the x-axis animation. That's fine as far as I'm concerned. I'm just going to select the z-axis animation, and I'm going to change these key points here so they're actually linear. So let me just make that linear in and linear out. There we go. And now you can. Now it should actually be a little bit more linear when it actually bounces. There we go. So it comes down and it bounces and it bounces and bounces, bounces. You can see this particular bounce here is maybe a little bit too high. So I'm going to just turn on Alt key again and move that down a bit. And every time Alt key is turned on and you alter any parameter, it'll create a key at that point. But as an example, one of the things you can do in the motion panel is you can actually go to the trajectory and modify that directly. And that's quite a cool way of animating. So if I go to trajectories, you can see I can select this. If I go to sub-object and select a key, you can see now that I can actually move this key. And by doing that, I can actually modify the animation. So that's quite a cool way of modifying animation if you wish to do so. Okay. So now we have a reasonable animation of the teapot bouncing. The next thing to do is to check to see if the pace of it is correct. So let's actually have a look at that. And you can see that it's really very slow. It's not very realistic, is it really? So what we're going to have to do here is actually shorten down the animation on that a little bit. And that will actually make it appear to go a little bit faster. So I'm going to go to the curve editor again, curve editor, there we go, and I'm going to select these keys here. That's pretty cool. Actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to dope sheet, there we go, and I'm going to select these keys, open up the teapot here, open up its transforms, open up its position. There we are, we have X, Y and Z there. So I'm going to select those keys and I'm going to use the scale tool here to actually change the scale the animation down here. So there we go. Oops, I need to actually select the 3 axes here. There we go, and just scale that down. Let's try moving it down by actually that isn't actually quite correct because we need to keep the impact point the same, so we need to actually scale down from frame 15 onwards, from this point onwards. So let's just do that again. Okay, there we go, and scale down. Okay, let's try that. Okay, that's pretty cool, I think. Bang. Now I need to change this key so the actual impact synchronizes, because you could see that when I scale these keys, the first key, which is the impact point, actually moved backwards in time. So the impact is actually happening a little bit earlier now. So we need to actually get that and transform that. So let's get that aligned again. There we go. Puts the teapot back where it should be. It's now maybe a little reacting a little bit too late, so we just need to adjust that. There we go. And the other problem that you can see now is that when it flies off the table, it flies down in a linear manner. So I need to put a key in there to actually give it some arc. So when it gets to that point, we'll just put a key in there, which makes it a little bit better. And we'll put a key there as well. Okay, there we go. We'll put that key in there as well. And we'll just modify the trajectory a little bit more now to make it a little bit more. You can see it's all become a little bit too compressed here. So I'm just going to move that up there, move that out here a little bit, move these all down. There we go, so the teapot flies a lot further on its initial strike. There we go, and then I'm going to make this bounce, this second bounce, a bit bigger. Same for this one. And now we'll just get a little bit more decay coming, so there we go, and Let's just try and modify this. And this as well. Okay, that's pretty cool. I like that. Now the next thing to do is when it strikes the teapot, you can see it's leaving a little bit early now, so we need to get that back in position again. So let's go and adjust this here. Let's go to dope sheet, and let's go down to open up the transforms again, and you can see that it really shouldn't start moving until it's been struck. So let's move that back in time, forward in time I should say. Okay, there we go. It's pretty cool. And now it stays on the plinth, it's smacked and goes flying through the air. Bang. There we go, that's great. Okay, you can see it's pretty rigid. I mean, it's flying off the plinth, but it's not really keeping, it's not actually rotating as it should do. So I'm just going to do a very quick bit of animation here. So I'll just skip through this to save a little bit of time. So bang, there, we'll just keep the rotation there, and bang. By the time it lands, I want it to land on its lid, so there it's going to land on its lid. We'll rotate that around, and I'll actually adjust the position later so that it at the moment it's landing and going through the floor, so I'll adjust the position of that later. So it goes bang, lands on the lid, bounces, lands on, let's say here, it goes all the way around, lands on here. Let's have a look at that. Bang, bounces, bounces, bang, bang. Okay, bounces, boom, boom, boom. We'll have it land again, this time like that. And then finally here, it'll land like that. And then skid to a halt. There we are, and it'll become flat at the end. So let's have a look at that. Bang, 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 bang. Okay, does a very quick spin there, so. Boom, boom, boom. Woo. Okay, we'll keep that in there. We'll just skip by that. It's not great animation, but it's, you know, it's something that'll actually do the job for now. So it does a little tumble at the end there, which is probably a little bit too much, but, you know, like I said, we'll keep that in for now, just to make it bang. Okay, I think actually what the problem is here is I've taken out some of the rotation there, so let's put some of that back in. Bang, bang, dung. Okay, that's better. And now let's go into the trajectory and fix the keys so that it actually lands on the floor. So the first one, it lands here, and we just grab that and move it up here. Then it bounces through the air, make that a little bit higher, comes down, boom, lands on the floor, spins. Again, needs to be a little bit higher to stop the spout sticking in the floor. Lands on its lid here, so we need to adjust that so it's actually landing on its lid. Bounces, maybe a little bit higher here, and then bounces. Okay, that's great. So let's have a look at that now. Smack. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, cool. Go into perspective mode and have a look at that. Okay, it's not the greatest bit of animation. You can see that the main problem with it at the moment is that the teapot is still actually a little bit floaty. You know, it's really not bouncing as fast as it should do. And to remedy that, I'm going to try and compress the animation a little bit more. So I'm going to show selection ranges on the timeline here. Select all the keys in the animation, grab the end of the bar here and reduce the length of it a little bit more. Go back, play the time, let's see that, bong. Okay, let me just undo that. Okay, dunk. Okay, that's fine. So what we need to do is we need to keep this key here in place. So I'm just going to select these keys now and try that again. Okay, let's try that. It's okay, but again, it's still a little bit floaty, so let's just try and increase that a little bit more. Okay, let's try that now. It's getting there, a little bit more. Still not quite there. Okay, let's try that. And you can see at the end it actually slides to the end of that very quickly, so just going to select those keys there and pull that out a little bit. Okay. Okay, that's not too bad. I think we'll go with that. Okay, let's move on to the next section where we'll add particle effects, and this will make the sphere at the end of the rope appear to be burning with flame. And then in the fourth section of the tutorial we'll actually texture those particles to make them look a little bit more like flame. Okay, let's do that.